I'd like to call to order the Clarkston Independence District Library Board of Trustee meeting for June 22nd at 5:42. Let us please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Jan Gaffney. Here. Michelle Ginn. Here. Dan Green.
Here.
Mary Hemberg. Here. Sally Lamb. Here. Allison McFadden Kiesling.
Here.
Marilyn Pomeroy.
Here.
Julie Meredith here.
Okay. I'll call for a motion on the agenda.
I move to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded that we approve the agenda as presented. Any comments? If not, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Call to the public.
Hi.
Hello there.
Hello there. The Friends have pretty much wrapped up their business until April. That's wishful thinking. Until August. We finished up with the Teen Art Show, which was more than a rip-roaring success. Last year, there were 60 plus art objects that were entered. This year, including, I want to make sure I had this right, the 7 amazing fish out in the garden, there were 105 art pieces, and about 660 people attended. Really exciting. And Erin Holmes, who was the team librarian ahead of this, and this was her first time doing this, she only knew how it had been done by word of mouth and reading documentation from past years. She came up with some wonderful ideas. She made sure she visited every art class at the high school and at the middle school. And the enthusiasm that she generated was just phenomenal. And I think that this is such a good program because in this time, well, for the last 10 years of decreasing funding to education, one of the first places that's truly been hit has been the arts, specifically the visual arts. The performing arts like drama and music and such still are able to go, and they really strike a wide base of the community. But the visual arts, which is very unique to a certain group of kids, has really taken a hit. And this was just a phenomenal showing. I know Erin got calls from parents how excited their kids were that their work was going to be presented. So it turned out to be a wonderful coup, not only for the library, but for the community and the kids. The other thing we finished up doing this month, and we're going to then hopefully be able to start in August, is tweaking our calendar, our past processes and such to make it much more efficient and effective in how we support the library in terms of the programming and the funding. So there's some new ideas that we'll be trying, and the first thing will be with the fall book sale.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other commentary? I know several of us attended. We thought the art show was very good. I like the arrangements where you had them grouped by age groups.
Right.
That was new this year, and I liked it.
She wanted to try that this year. She's open to any ideas. She, and then coming back and reevaluating. I should mention it was open to grades 6 through 12. With the 12th grade being a separate grade unto itself, which was really nice.
Nicely laid out. Okay, thank you very much. I'll accept a motion on the consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Okay, no one wishes to remove. We had
You're louder than me. Most days a trip.
No one has a question about any of these particular items? If not, those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Okay, next, library statistics.
Staff sent lots of news this month. From the head of Children's and Teen Services, she says, we are busy planning for summer reading. It's actually underway. The point at which she sent me this, they were still planning, but they're well underway now. So they didn't have a lot of programming in May, but they were visiting they had several visiting preschool classes, and most excitedly, they had a visit from the 4th grade girls from Everest Academy, which we've been trying to build a relationship with Everest Academy, so we're excited that we made that inroads. They wanted to hear about summer reading and spend a few hours in the library. It was a great visit and hopefully the beginning of a new connection with Everest. We also were able to do school visits at all 5 elementary schools in the district. 2 years ago, none of the elementary schools would have us. They couldn't fit us into their schedule. Last year, we were able to do 3. This year, all 5. So we hope to keep those connections alive and well. The summer reading kickoff event was Monday, June 15th. Was a huge success. Despite the threat of menacing weather, nearly 500 people attended, and registration was up 25% over last year's kickoff event. So lots to be proud of there. They're very excited. Marion provided an update from Erin about the art show. We do have the winners here, and I'd like to just take a moment to read them off. In 6th and 7th grade, the first place winner was Samantha Stanke with A Handful of Love. Second place was Megan Chang with Slightly Windy. Third place was Natalie Gell with Power 9.4.5. In 8th and 9th grade, first place was Jacqueline Kister with No Game, No Life, Shiro. Second place was Kaylee Halligan with Exquisite Winged Tapestry. Third place was Janice Morales with Eye of the Tiger. In 10th and 11th grade, first place was Blaze Rain with Grandpa. Second place was Chrysalu Candilis with Sunflower. Third place was Emily Grush with Yellow Raincoat. And in 12th grade, first place was Katrina Wilmot with Tranquility. Second place was Elise Cameron with Beyonce Scratchboard. And third place was Janine Romer with Wolfpack. So congratulations to all of our winners, and thank you to all of those great artists who submitted work. It was really a great event. From the head of adult services, our library is part of Everyone's Reading, which involves several neighboring libraries in the area. Everybody reads the same book and has a chance to win tickets to hear this year's author, Brad Meltzer, talk in person on June 22nd, today, in Rochester and Bloomfield. We've had 43 plus patrons participate. This is also the time of year where we add a few new titles to our book group kits. In reviewing the circulation counts from June 2014 to May 2015, we've checked out 1,148 books for our library and local book groups. We also deliver books to go to homebound seniors. The numbers go up and down, obviously, due to, unfortunately, to some of the patrons passing away. But in the last week, they've had 6 new patrons sign up for the service. So it's a small group that we have. It's a dozen, but it's very much appreciated. And it really doesn't cost us anything. The librarians pull the books together, and we drop them over at the senior center, and they get delivered with the Meals on Wheels delivery vans. So this is really a low-cost program for us. Last year, we delivered 240 books to homebound seniors, which was a really nice thing.
It's a lot of reading.
It is a lot of reading. It is a lot of reading.
If I were homebound, I would also be doing a lot of reading.
That's right. That's a good point. A very good point.
I think great service.
From the head of technical services, Brad wanted you to know that they have begun the music CD recasing, which is a project that you approved a couple of months ago, and the reorganization by genre project. Both are being completed at the same time at present. Over 50% of the over 3,200 adult CDs have been completed. The used CD locking cases are being shipped to the Flat Rock Public Library through the TLN delivery to be used for their collection, and any of the used jewel cases are being recycled. So he's been working very hard on that project, and so has the staff. So I'm very proud of them for how hard they worked on that. And as soon as they finish the CD project, the next one he'll be sending a proposal for is DVDs. So they'll be seeing that one eventually too. That's it. Okay. Now the library director's report. It's been a lot of news too. It's been a busy month.
Under general information, from September 2013 through September 2014, our library participated in the campaign coordinated by OCLC and funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. In this campaign, the word geek was used as a verb to describe whatever someone loves or is passionate about, and the taglines, "What do you geek?" and "Whatever you geek, the library supports you," were developed to promote the library's critical role of lifelong learning throughout the entire community. From 2009 to 2015, more than 4,500 libraries across the country participated in this Gates Foundation-supported program that helped library staff learn key skills for promoting library services and, more importantly, connect with the community in a personal and meaningful way. Now that this grant program is drawing to a close, OCLC and the Gates Foundation are recognizing what they call Geek the Library Superstars, libraries that successfully used the campaign to make a significant impact. Because our Geek the Library campaign literally saved our library from possible closure, the Clarkston Independence District Library has been selected as one of 6 libraries to be recognized at a reception at the American Library Association annual conference in San Francisco on June 28th. The Geek the Library grant is completely funding my trip to the conference to represent our library at this celebration. I leave on Friday, June 26th, and will return on Monday, June 29th. So this is really very exciting. Yeah.
Very good.
In terms of finances, the library board treasurer and library director have been negotiating with Independence Township over the OPEB money set aside in trust to pay for retiree health care of library employees. Now that the library is an independent entity, some of the money needs to be left in the trust at the township to pay for the library employee that already retired. Since the trust includes dedicated library millage funds need to be turned over to the library to pay for the benefits of the library employees that will retire in the future. The township has presented a proposal and a tentative agreement has been reached. We are waiting for the township attorney to draw up a contract to execute the agreement, which will then be reviewed by the library's attorney. When the contract is complete, the proposal and contract will be reviewed and approved by the township board and then by the library board. So we anticipate in the next month or so, I hate to put a timeline on it, we don't know exactly how long it's going to take them to approve contracts, but we're almost there. So, finally. Collaborations and projects. Ryan Snyder of local Boy Scout Troop 199 is working on an Eagle Scout project. He will be building a puppet stage and new board book shelving for our library. He is fundraising to pay for the wood, paint, etc. by doing a returnable bottle drive. We've placed a returnable bottle collection can in the library's lobby with Ryan's sign requesting support. His goal is to have the project complete by the end of July, so we are collecting returnable cans and bottles until July 15th. Please consider supporting Ryan's efforts by donating your returnables. Next item, the library participated in the Ryan Kennedy Kids Day in the Park through Independence Township Parks and Rec by providing a booth with a bird feeder craft project for kids to make and take home. We received a nice letter thanking us for being a part of that event that brought in an estimated 3,000 people, so we're very excited about that, and I have that letter I'll pass down the line shortly, and you can take a look at that. As an announcement, on Saturday, July 4th, the library's children's department will participate in the local 4th of July parade. The library's summer theme is Every Hero Has a Story, so young people are being asked to dress in superhero costumes. Kids will receive goodie bags, and adults walking in the parade with us will be given a superhero t-shirt. The goodie bags and t-shirts are being provided by the Friends of the Library, so thank you to the Friends. And anyone who would like to sign up to participate can contact the library to sign up. And then on May 19th, 2015, the Clarkston Independence District Library was honored with the Clarkston Community Award for Community Enhancement. We've been contacted by the Clarkston 4th of July Parade Committee and invited to walk with a group of Clarkston Community Award winners. So we're already in one part of the parade, and I just wondered if there might be a board member or two who might like to walk on behalf of the library in that. You can think about it and let me know later, but I also have the award that we won for the few board members that were unable to attend, so you can look at that at the end of the meeting as well. Okay, so think about that, and if you would like to walk in that manner, please let me know.
Okay, thank you. Now, to regular business. And the first regular business is a presentation of the audit. And Kimberly Allman is presenting.
I'm going to stand over here if that's okay.
That's fine.
Okay, my name is Kimberly Allman, and I'm a manager with Abraham and Gaffney. I've been on this audit since we've gotten the account last year, so for the last couple of years I've been on the audit. You should have this presentation in front of you, minus all my notes. And so that's what we're going to go over today. The first thing I wanted to do before I start, though, is to thank Julie and her team. Sharon and Debbie helped us out a lot as well, and we just wanted to thank them for their assistance throughout the audit. A few of you that were here kind of heard me say that it went a lot better than last year. Last year was the first year, and there was, a transition, with the library. So this year went much, much better. So we really appreciate all of that assistance. And just so that you're aware, everything was ready for us when we actually came out for the audit, which is nice because we go some places and it's not ready for us. So very, very appreciated. My plan tonight is just to go through some of the highlights of the audit. So you'll notice that this is kind of a thin package. It doesn't have everything that's in your financial statements, but I just want to go over some highlights. So if there's any questions, feel free to stop me at any time. Okay? So if you go to the first page, these first couple of pages are actually our opinion. And I will start by saying that the pages in here say draft. However, we're in the process of finalizing the reports. So last year we didn't issue the reports until the end of July, and the library is required to actually have their audits issued to the state by the end of June, and so we will be on time this year. So that's nice. So the first couple of pages are our opinion on your financial statements. And it's important to note that we actually gave the library an unmodified opinion. It used to be called an unqualified opinion a couple of years ago, but it's called unmodified now. And that means it's a clean opinion. So it's the highest opinion that you can get from your auditors. Okay. It's the best opinion, and what it means is that the financial statements are in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles, and that the numbers are good. So that we audited those numbers and they're good. Just as a reminder, though, a lot of times people think that when you have an audit, that the auditors come in order to try to find fraud. That's not the objective of the audit. The objective of the audit is actually to make sure that that your financial statements are fairly presented and that there's no material misstatements. Okay. On the second page of that letter, we have a paragraph in here below the opinion that actually talks about an emphasis of matter. And what that is that there was a new accounting pronouncement that the library was required to adopt and implement this year. And it just relates to that the transfer where the library actually separated from the township. And so that was a pronouncement that had to be adopted this year. It didn't impact the numbers of the financial statements, but when you look through your notes of the financial statements, you're actually going to see a note that's labeled like gain contingency. And what that is because we didn't know that number of what the township owes the library yet for what Julie was describing for those benefits. So, are there any questions on the opinion letter? Okay, so if you go to the next page, this starts your actual financial statements. And so the one that says governmental fund balance sheet and statement of net position, this is actually a snapshot of the library's financial position at December 31st, 2014. So what it shows is it shows your fund level, any adjustments, and then your government-wide level. We're actually going to focus on the fund level. The fund level is what your current financial resources focus is. And so it's really how well this year's resources can cover this year's obligations. So the one number that I wanted to kind of point out in here is you'll see at the third line down under assets, it says due from other governmental units. If you look at and compare it to last year, that was actually around $800,000 last year. And so the reason that it doubled is solely because of the property tax millage getting passed. And so these are receivables for those property taxes that were levied on December 1st of 2014. So it went from the 0.691 mils to the 1.25. And so that's why you see it like double. It's because of the doubling in taxes. Another measure that we actually look at is the unassigned fund balance. So if you go kind of to the middle of the page where it says fund balance, you'll see there's a non-spendable portion and then the unassigned. So the unassigned fund balance is what is available for future expenditures, or it's the actual unassigned amount divided by your total expenditures, which are on the next page. The Government Finance Officers Association, they actually recommend that governments have 2 months of normal operations or total expenditures, and that equals around 17%. So that's the percentage that you're shooting for. When we look at the library's unassigned fund balance and we look at the total divided by the total expenditures for 2014, that percentage is actually 42%. And last year, it was around 46%. And that's because you'll see, we'll talk about the expenditures, they actually did go up. But even though there was a decrease in that percentage, what that means is that the library is, well within the range and that they are in excellent financial condition.
Thank you.
Okay. Any questions on this page before I go to the next page? Okay. So on the next page, this is your changes in your fund balance. So this shows your expenditures and your revenues for the year. So we'll start by looking at the expenditures go at the top, so that's your first section. So the total expenditures actually increased by around 13.5% for 2014 as compared to 2013, and that came out to about $120,000. The biggest increase was due to the salaries and benefits, and so that increase was around $81,000 out of the $120,000. And the reason was because there was an employee that was on like short-term disability that had, so the part-time people had to kind of cover for that person being off.
Yes.
And then also because there was someone who had retired, and so the part-time people were hired to actually fill that position while it was vacant. So that's really the biggest reason for that salary increase. For the employee benefits piece, you'll see that piece is actually around $28,000 increase, and that's because 2 of the people that actually quit were single on the health coverage, which is a lot, less expensive than the 2 people that were hired. And the 2 people that were hired, one was a family and one was a married. So that automatically increases your expense right there as well. There was also, the other item was that there were around $14,000 of increased expenses for repairs and maintenance during the year. And I know based on your minutes, it was because of the sealing of the parking lot and also the sidewalk replacement. Those were like the 2 biggest purchases that, accounted for that increase. For program revenues and general revenues, they actually only increased by $11,000 in total for the year. And when I went and I looked back, it's really solely related to the property taxes. In 2013, there were $30,000 of tax chargebacks for the delinquent taxes. And in 2014, it was only $15,000. And those chargebacks actually decrease your total property tax revenue that comes in. So this is almost like a net number for your property taxes, and so that was directly attributed to the increase, was because you had less chargebacks this year than you did last year. Any questions on this?
Looks very clear.
All right, so now we get to go to the fun part, the colorful part. The next page is a 3-year graph, and eventually what this will get to be is a 5-year. And then it'll be like a rolling 5-year graph. But right now we have 3 years of the library's existence. So this shows the revenues, expenditures, and the fund balance for the general fund. So what you can see is you can see a trend where the revenues actually increased, the expenditures have increased, and the fund balance has increased. So from last year to this year, the revenues were pretty close to each other, even though you had an increase in expenditures. What you're going to see next year, because of that millage, you're going to see a huge jump in the revenue. So you're just going to see that line just go way past the 1.2 million that's up here right now. So, any questions on that? Okay. The next page just shows your 2 pie charts, and it shows your 2014 revenue and 2014 expenses. And this is just a pictorial representation of what we've already kind of gone over. But I just wanted to point out, if you look at the very top chart, you'll see that 90% of the total revenue that comes into the library is from property taxes. And that's going to be expected to continue in future years as well. When you look at the expenditure detail, the 51% and the 17%, that's your salaries and your fringe benefits. So that equals around 69.1%. But if you compare that to last year, even though it increased, the salaries and fringes as a percent for last year were 69.3%. So really, in relation to total expenditures, it actually went down, the salaries and the fringes, in relation to total expenditures from last year, if that's confusing. You know, it went up, but it went down. So, and then you'll see the next largest expenditure, which we expect, is the 7.3%, and that's your library books and materials. So that means that the library is spending money on books and materials. Any questions on that? Okay. So then the last couple of pages relate to, you know, any sort of maybe things that were control deficiencies or things that we noticed that could be, you know, items for improvement. So this letter, I think, was 4 pages last year. So it's down to 2, and I'll just call it 1.5 because it's about half a page for the second page. So the library has made strides. They took the recommendations that we had and they implemented them, and sometimes we see that and sometimes we don't, so it was really nice to see. So one of the things, the very bottom, the first item is the segregation of duties, and this actually was a finding last year as well. And it's really just relates to the same person handling the mail that handles the general ledger. And so we had talked through this with Julie, and I think that she was going to put a new procedure in place to kind of remediate this so that this finding goes away next year.
Well, what we did last year was more of not completely understanding how segregated that we should have made it. So the administrative assistant is handling the accounts payable, but then she was also sorting the mail. And so I talked to her about it, and we reassigned the sorting of the mail, but out of habit, she was still doing it. Not all the time, but we had other people doing it most of the time, and she was still doing it. And what Kimberly really was trying to say is, no, she shouldn't be doing it at all. So now that we fully understand that, we can correct the difference.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Is that due to the fact that we have a small staff?
Well, I mean, it is a small staff, but you can pull somebody in that maybe just to do that one job of opening the mail, you know, creating a check log, things like that, because what you don't want is you don't want to have the same person opening the mail that can have access to checks.
Okay.
That is also having access to record things in the general ledger.
Okay.
Because it just creates an opportunity for fraud to occur. Not saying that Debbie would ever do that, but just saying that it creates the opportunity, and you want to try to eliminate or mitigate those risks as much as possible. So,
You know, we did start doing the check log. That part we were doing. We started doing that last year, but like I said, what we didn't realize was that, no, she shouldn't be doing it at all. What we were doing was thinking, well, if we could segregate it where she wasn't, because she's the one who's here Monday through Friday when the mail comes, and so she was doing it on days when, because everybody else works
Comes and goes
and doesn't work. Yeah, she and I are the main ones that are here Monday through Friday. So basically what we've done is we've selected several full-time employees and said, okay, the first one of you that sees the mail come, you do it. And so she doesn't do it at all, and I do it sporadically, but I'm not the one who's doing the actual deposits. So she's not handling it all anymore. So we have figured out, it just took us a while to figure out what exactly that meant and how to execute it.
yeah, definitely. So with those procedures, if those are being followed, and we can see those next year, this finding will go away.
For correction, she absolutely refuses to touch the mail now.
She's like, I'm not touching
really
it at all.
corrected.
I'm not touching it at all, yeah.
She's like, I've been reprimanded twice, I'm not doing it anymore. So.
And so on the second page, then, we only had one additional comment, and that just related to doing an annual inventory of your capital assets. So taking the listing of all of the assets that the library has and kind of going through it to see if there's anything that maybe the library is no longer using, or if the library sold something, just to make sure that it gets removed off that listing and gets accounted for properly. So that was just one of the things that we recommended too.
Did you have a timeline in mind?
I would say to do it probably like right before the end of the year, maybe like mid-December, to have it done then, because then the books can be adjusted. Like Sharon can then adjust the books for, any of
Before the
those
new
items.
year.
Because if there's things like, if things are purchased, then they need to go on that listing. It doesn't hit like the general ledger, because the general ledger is only at the fund level, but we need that listing to get to that government-wide level, which is that very end column for financial
And
statement
the thing that we
purposes.
struggled with is because the library used to be a township department, the township wasn't keeping a list that was as detailed as what she would like to see for us. So what we really need to do is pay an employee to do a complete inventory of everything, because what we inherited was not as detailed as what she would like to be. So it's not even a matter of, we're keeping track of what's coming and going, but we need to update that list. And so that's one of the things when I said we would like a part-time administrative assistant for some period of time. That's one of the projects I would assign that person to, is to tackle that big project. Just to make sure that list is completely updated. Okay, so there's a plan.
Any questions on the letter?
No, we thank you, because that's exactly why we have hired you. Because we want a review of what we're doing correctly and what we can continue to improve on.
And like I said, I think that letter was 4 pages last year, so you can tell just by the volume that it has improved, so.
We'll shoot for 1 for next year.
Yeah, there you go. Or 0. How about that?
You presented this very clearly.
Yes, thank you.
Do you guys have any other questions for me? My contact information is on the back as well, so, feel free if there's any questions throughout the year that you guys might have, or things that you want to bounce off of us, feel free to contact us.
Okay, thank you very much. We appreciate the
It was
review.
nice meeting all of you.
Very
Thank you.
succinct. We hope to see you again.
Yes, thank you.
So thank you very much for coming in.
Oh, no problem. It's actually one of my favorite things to do on a presentation.
Very good. Okay. The audit presentation being complete, it's time to review our first quarter financials and budget adjustments. Or do we need
Let's vote
a,
and approve the
Yes, let's-
the audit presentation.
accept a motion for approval of the audit?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the audit presentation. Any questions or comments before we do so? Okay, those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And opposed? The motion is carried. Thank you very much. Okay, now, let's review the first quarter financials and budget adjustments.
In your packet, you have the first quarter financials as provided by Sharon Duckworth, who's our accountant. There are 2 budget adjustments that are going to be requested. I'm going to let you know what those are, so that when we get to them, you'll see them pop out at you. $150 from undesignated revenue to 818.74, which is miscellaneous special events. A few additional expenses for the library's open house in February were charged to this line item, causing it to go over budget slightly. And then item number 2, $10,000 from undesignated revenue to 931 buildings and ground maintenance. With the assistance of our designated maintenance technician from Allied Building Services, we've been making a wide variety of necessary small repairs to the building that have accumulated over time, such as replacing leaking faucets, replacing ceiling tiles, damaged by leaks prior to the roof being replaced, repairing and repainting scuffed walls, replacing broken tiles, etc. He's been coming every other month to work on a punch list of items created by staff. That's what the banging was before the meeting. He's installing a shelf for Arlene. And we anticipate that there will be more of these repairs over the coming months. So just those are the 2 budget adjustments that we'll discuss. So if you look at the first page, the way this works, column A is the 2015 budget as approved. Column B is the 3-month budget. In other words, if we were spending the equal amount of money each month, this is how much we should have spent. Column C is the 3-month actual, which is how much we've spent in the first 3 months of the year. And then column C minus column A is the variance, and that lets you know how much budget is remaining in that line item. So there are everything is actually going along quite smoothly. There are a couple of line items that Sharon had a little bit of concern about. The first one was that special events on the first page, 818.740. There was $1,000 budgeted. Now, one of the problems with libraries is we don't...
You keep seeing the front page, it's the second page.
Oh, did it flip?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I'm sorry. I apologize. They went into the packet backwards. They look almost the same, and sorry about that. Anyway, there was $1,000 in that budget, and one of the things the library doesn't normally spend evenly in every single line item that we do. We spend
Right.
more in some months and less in others, and that sort of thing. So even though $250 is what we would have spent, and we spent $1,142, that money was set aside for specific purposes, and they were all at the beginning of the year. So that was that first budget adjustment of $150 that I mentioned. As we travel down, the other line that Sharon was concerned about is our 931 building and grounds maintenance. We did add additional money to that line item. We all know the building has lots and lots of work that needs to be done to it. And the way we've been handling this is the staff has been making a punch list of items, and then we've been trying to prioritize those based on things that should be done right away and things that could wait.
Safety issues.
Safety issues first, absolutely safety issues first. But then we're also trying to make improvements to the building just to make it look nicer as well. So we're requesting an additional $10,000 to go into that line item so we can continue to make those sorts of repairs. Now that line item still has money in it, but based on the rate at which we're doing some of these repairs, we should probably add some more money so we can continue to do that. Line item 900, printing and publishing. That one was one that Sharon wanted me to mention. That's a $20,000 line item. Up until this point, we should have spent about $5,000, but we've spent $5,919. That's one of those line items that doesn't get spent evenly. And the reason that it's not spending evenly is because we actually do a newsletter 3 times a year. So instead of that expenditure being divided out like once per quarter, it's a larger amount than that. And so because it's 3 times a year, we'll have one quarter where we won't have that expenditure at all, and that'll balance things out. So it's a little more in the first quarter because we paid for the winter spring newsletter. Are there any other ones that she had? Those were the only line items that she that gave her pause. Everything else she thought was right about where it was supposed to be. So, any questions or comments on that?
Okay, can I have a motion to approve the budget adjustments as presented?
I so move. I second it.
Who was my did? I'm sorry, thank you. And who was my second?
I did it.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
Okay, any questions about that? We start our changes. All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, nay. Motion is carried. Okay, the next item, we have a circulation policy.
I feel like I bring you the circulation policy on a regular basis, but there are a lot of things we've been wanting to do, and every time something happens, it needs an adjustment. So, our library is part of the library network known as TLN. So we have a reciprocal borrowing agreement with all other members of TLN, and that's about 67 libraries in Wayne and Oakland County. The Troy Public Library, TPL, is the only library in Oakland County that is a member of a different library cooperative. They belong to the Suburban Library Cooperative, which is SLC. So there has not been a reciprocal borrowing agreement between CIDL and TPL. We've had some patrons ask if we could negotiate an agreement with TPL. After discussion between the heads of circulation of the 2 libraries, it was suggested that the 2 libraries could simply enter into an agreement with the same policies and privileges as the TLN reciprocal borrowing agreement. The 2 library directors agreed that this was an appropriate plan. Included in your packet, please find the agreement between the 2 libraries and the updated circulation policy recognizing this newly formed agreement between TPL and CIDL. The new text to be approved in the circulation policy is highlighted in bright yellow. And it basically says that the residents of the Troy Public Library may use the Clarkson Independent District Library with the same privileges as a non-resident for TLN, and they are providing that same agreement for our patrons. So.
I have a question for you, because I don't know what the policy is. How many books can somebody check out that's a non-resident?
It is, should be right there. I think it's The TLN, including Troy, would be 20 items total.
Can I ask a question? Why do you think Troy's part of the Suburban Library Cooperative instead of TLN?
It's interesting, having worked at the Library of Michigan, there's a misconception that library cooperatives are geographic, but they're really not. Each library cooperative offers a set of services, and libraries join based on the services that are offered. Now, generally speaking, they do tend to be geographic. For TLN, one of the things that we get is part of our delivery service. And so that's why all those libraries are really close together, tend to be geographic. The Suburban Library Cooperative, Troy uses the RIDES system, which is based at the state library, so they don't need that delivery service. And Suburban is offering some different services that they are utilizing that TLN doesn't offer.
Okay.
So,
So if I went to Troy and borrowed 10 books, could I return them here? How would they get back there?
we would send them, basically, we can send books anywhere in the state of Michigan.
Okay.
Now, the way we do it is we send it through TLN and then it goes to RIDES. Some libraries choose to have RIDES come to their library directly. And basically what we did was we did a cost analysis, and TLN is still cheaper for us. And basically what happens is TLN is subsidizing that fee. As a member, we get that as a subsidy, which is kind of nice. So that's an advantage to us. So whatever the other service that Troy is getting from us that they like better probably offsets the more costly it is for the ride service. So, any other questions?
No,
it's good.
All right, I will accept a motion to approve.
I move to approve the updated circulation policy as presented.
Second.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Okay, those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. The updated circulation policy is approved.
How long is that for in effect for? Is it termination date?
In the agreement, it basically says that either library can cancel it.
Oh, okay.
So it's an indefinite thing until one of us decides we don't want to do it anymore.
Gotcha.
Yep.
All right. Yep. Okay. All right. Next item. The approval of the staff work area project and budget adjustment.
In an effort to provide appropriate workspace for additional library staff, some adjustment to the current cubicle area will be needed. The library's department heads talked with staff and met to discuss what changes would be needed. Chris DeVere from Library Design Associates, the company that handled the library's space planning project in 2008, visited the library to review the project. He provided the attached proposal to do the work. While there are potentially other vendors who might be able to do this work, Library Design Associates is not only familiar with the 22-year-old discontinued office furniture system that we have, they are also familiar with the exact layout and all the pieces that we own because they did the work. They already have the list. They know what we have better than we do, I think. This reduces the time needed to execute the project and lowers the cost because they already have all of the needed documentation, so we're not having to pay somebody to come in and really look at it. While this work on the library's cubicle area was discussed, it was not budgeted when we were talking about staffing and things like that. We talked about changes needing to be made because we did not have a firm idea during the budget process of exactly what might be required to accommodate the proposed staffing changes. The library director is requesting a budget of $2,500 to be transferred from undesignated revenue to line 980, the building line, for the purpose of making the needed improvements to the staff work area, including the attached proposal and any additional needs such as chairs, file drawers, etc. To be honest, this is a lot less expensive than I thought it was going to be.
Sure.
So,
And that furniture usually lasts for so long because it's library furniture.
it is very, very sturdy stuff. They're going to be, it's interesting when we went through the space planning process, he basically took absolutely everything he had. Some pieces he cut, some pieces they built a few custom pieces to allow us to do some additional things because, like I said, it's been discontinued. We have everything we need to do the project except for 2 5-foot desktops. So they're having those custom made, and then basically the way they charge is they send out, well, Bill is the guy who did the most of the space planning on our building. He knows our building inside out, just like he does every library that he works on. They'll send him out, or one of his guys out for half a day and they charge by each piece that they have to move. So for every desktop we move, for every cubicle we flip, for every flipper door we move, that kind of thing. And so basically this proposal is, I told Chris everything I wanted done, and he checked it off the list, and this is the cost that he's estimating.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah.
Pretty reasonable. Like I said, I was really expecting it to be far more expensive, especially because we had 2 desktops that would need to be made since you can't get those desktops anymore.
All right. Any comments, questions? If not, I'll accept a motion.
I move to approve the budget adjustment of $2,500 from the undesignated revenue to line 980 building for the purpose of making improvements to the staff work area.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any other questions? Has everyone had a chance to walk around in the area that we're speaking of? All right.
It's real cozy.
It's amazing what they do in that space.
All right, if that's the case, all those in favor of transferring these funds, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, the motion is carried. Next is the parking lot update.
Okay, so we're going to be looking at this together because this plan came at 5:15, which is why we're starting a little bit late because I've had some technical difficulties, but I think we're on it. With the big storm we had earlier, we did have a power outage, and to be perfectly frank, that always just throws off everything that goes on in this building. Oh, thank you. Okay. So where are we with the parking lot project so far? The first thing we did was we brought in, for the public so that they know what we've done, the first thing we did was we brought in HRC. In 2012, the township had HRC, Hubble, Roth & Clark, which is a civil engineering firm, come in and look at the library's parking lot and make an assessment how much they thought it would be for a repaving or a total reconstruction of the parking lot. And the cost ranged anywhere from $214,000 up to $300,000. Now, a few years later, 3 years later, we're looking at this project and we're realizing that, of course, costs are going up. There are fewer companies doing these kinds of construction projects, and a lot of them are often doing major road projects and things like that. So the cost has gone up significantly. So we asked HRC to look at what they gave us in 2012 and to update it, which the board has seen. And basically what I asked them to do was to give us a broken down project in phases. And they've given us 3 phases. So what the board decided was to move forward on phase 1. And that was an official vote. So I called HRC and said, let's get to work on phase 1. Our goal is to complete phase 1 before the snow flies this year. And we are working as hard as we can to get there. So the first thing that happened is that Albert, our civil engineer, came out and he took a look at the parking lot for phase 1, and he and I walked it even after what you had seen, and we made some adjustments to it. Now, phase 1 is the driveway. To get your bearings on this, the parking lot is to the left. It's kind of our whole parking lot from where we're sitting is tipped up like this. So the driveway would be outside this wall here. The phase 1 is the driveway from Clarkson Road all the way to the end of the parking lot, including this little section where the stop sign is. That needs to be brought in a little bit, and up where the loop goes around, that's coming in a little bit. And then I had him do some patches in the front. He had 2 patches that were in the back of the parking lot, but the ones I was really concerned about is this portion right here. This section, this little loop right here, is degrading to the point that I asked him to take, we're going to give up this patch and we're going to put it here. And then we're going to give up this patch and we're going to put it here. This is where the cars come in, there's the stop sign, they come this way, and a lot of traffic goes here, here, and here. A lot fewer cars come around this back area. So I was not as concerned about these. And since part of the parking lot is going to wait until next year, I'm less concerned about this and more concerned about these. The other thing that I asked him to do that wasn't entirely covered, he had some concrete work as well. Most of the concrete work will be next, either in phase 2 or phase 3. But I did have him, this is the island in the middle with the ramp. I did ask him to do the steps. We did one step, and we knew that we were going to have to do additional steps, but I asked him to do the steps. He already had this little piece and this part of the ramp to be done, but I asked him to add that on, so this is now included. The other piece that he had not included was the sidewalk. This is the flagpole circle, and this piece of sidewalk that goes all the way around the handicap parking. He hadn't realized how bad this was, and I walked him out there and said I was really concerned about this area as well, so we added that in as well, because it really is deteriorating, and we need that to be safe for people who are coming in who have mobile disabilities that make it harder for them. So that's what's in this proposal. They brought in a surveyor to kind of look everything over, and so this is the updated plan going forward. Are there any questions?
Did this raise the cost?
It will probably raise the cost somewhat because I added a few things.
Okay.
Yeah, but I don't think that it's going to be significantly higher. Now, we had a contractor, a general asphalt contractor come in prior to having HRC do this, and they said, oh yeah, we can do that driveway for you for like $50,000. Well, they were just going to cap it. And this is not a cap. This is a grind and re-asphalt. And the other thing that contractor had not even mentioned was we have two storm drains. We have a storm drain here, and we have a storm drain up here. And those storm drains are deteriorating to the point where they need to be completely rebuilt. And part of the reason we're having so much trouble with that driveway is because there's a drainage issue. And so we think that this will solve the biggest part of the problem, which is the fact that this part of the driveway all the way through to here, just every year, it just keeps crumbling. And we patch it and it crumbles, and we patch it and it crumbles. So we're going to take this whole section and do all of it. Any questions about that? Okay, I have one thing that he did want me to read to you. He sent me a quick email. Make sure I have it here. Here it is. He wanted me, let's see. You might want to mention to the board that we are planning on putting up new handicap signs, but keep in mind that the pavement slopes do not meet today's handicap requirements. Not sure that there's anything we can do in that area to rectify the slope issues with what they are currently, but we may need to revisit this in the next phase. And we could potentially decide to hold off putting up the signs. I think the signs aren't really all that expensive. We could put them in if we had to move them. I don't think that would be a big deal. But one of the problems, this is the area that he's concerned about, is that when the building was built, the requirements for the slope in the handicapped area were one requirement, and the requirement is not as lenient, as much stricter than it used to be. Less slope. And we have a big slope right here, and he was really concerned about what to do about that. So, but that's not part of what we're paving this year. So we are going to do this to make sure that the sidewalk is safe, but he is concerned that we may have to address a much bigger issue right here. So, either in 2 or 3.
Okay.
Since we're going to be making some repairs to the sidewalk, does that eliminate our being grandfathered in on the other? Okay.
No, he wasn't concerned about that part, but he did say that we might want to have a longer conversation about what to do with that. So,
Because will that slope issue impact the entrance, the car entrance to that part of the parking lot from the driveway?
well, we're not going to make any adjustments to it this year, so not at this point, but
It's just the walking part.
I think the slope issue is not down here, it's more like right here, and I'm wondering if there's some, well, I'm not sure what the plan is. We're going to have to figure something out, but
Okay.
it only goes to right here at this edge. The handicap parking doesn't actually start till up here. So
Okay.
we should be able to do this next year without affecting what we already did.
All right, that's important.
And this part of it, the sidewalk is way in front of it, and this is actually pretty flat. There's kind of a funky, it's hard, it's not very hard to describe, but it kind of goes like this part is flatter and then it kind of goes like this. So the sidewalk is actually flatter than the driveway slope.
Right.
It all kind of, from here, it all kind of slopes in that direction. So this is actually flatter right here than it is right here. There's some tip here that he's not happy with after we had it surveyed, so. But then again, it probably hasn't been surveyed since 1990 or 1991 when they did the original parking lot.
There's no reason to.
Yeah, there'd be no reason to.
Okay.
So we really had no way of knowing that, but he even said that when he started the original project. He said, this slope seems awfully high, and then when the surveyor came out, he's like, yep, it is. So, okay.
Okay, does this require any changes in our,
Not at this point. I was really hoping he'd be a little bit farther along than this, but they're working as fast as they can, and they know that you want this done before the snow flies. So I'm pushing, but at least he's got this part done. He's got a few little tweaks left. So you will see this again. He may need you to call a special meeting to make some decisions.
okay.
I think would be.
But Julie, with this that you have now, you really can't get bids.
Yeah.
We're almost there.
Okay.
We couldn't even contemplate bids until we were this far.
And that's
Because
the
we-
goal, is to get there
Yep. it's to get
sooner
there.
rather than later.
Yep, absolutely. And we're thinking in terms of timing. To be perfectly honest, having them do work in June and July and the beginning part of August is not good for us because that's our busiest time of the year. So ripping out the driveway, not a good plan. We've talked a little bit, just the startings, about how we're going to coordinate this. If we need to coordinate in order to keep the library open, it will make the project take much longer. If we can shut down the library for a couple of days and let them rip it out and put it back in, that would speed up the process.
Be preferable.
It would be preferable in this case because it would go a lot faster.
It would also
Inconvenience
create
people for a
fewer
couple of-
seams in the pavement
Absolutely.
when it's done, which means that it should last longer. And, I mean, a seam is always going to be where you start having problems.
And to be honest, the contractors are going to like it better anyway because they would rather come in here and whip through and get it done instead of having to keep one lane open each way. The staff was a little bit concerned about that, especially our part-timers, because when we close, they lose their hours. So my suggestion was, depending on when they decide to do that, that might be a great time for us to do a staff development day because the library would already be closed, so the staff could come in and spend the day. We could do some training and some things like that. So there's work to be done, and it would prevent us, because we often choose a day to close for staff development. Well, let's close, if we have to close anyway, let's try and do it all at the same time. We think that we've always had a really good relationship with the church across the street and also with the administration office next door, so we could probably use that for parking and walkovers. So the staff seemed pretty pleased that that might be an option, so that would be my
And
recommendation.
then we won't have to close another day for
Right.
staff training.
Yep, right, absolutely. Yep. So, any questions about this?
Oh, good.
Okay.
Thank you.
She's like, I think I gave you all the information I had.
Excellent.
Although he did have me put his cell phone on speed dial on my cell phone so that I could call him if he did. So.
Okay. Okay. Are there any questions, or that was succinct? That brings us up to date. All right. Let's look at item 6. Yes. We're looking now at a new position.
Okay. The library's head of Children's and Teen Services is requesting permission to create and post for a full-time youth services librarian, and she has her proposal materials in the packet. She has included for you a letter, and we can go over that if you like. Want to go ahead and go over that?
I read it and thought it was very well put together.
I read it as well.
Okay, so if we might delay, it's in the packet online, right?
It is in the packet, well, it's in the packet online, it has been in, it went up online as soon as the board got it as well, so it's been there. There is the proposal, and this is something that we talked about, we just hadn't put it in because she was still thinking about it, and she wasn't sure. At first she thought maybe part-time, and then she thought maybe full-time. She had more time to really work through this. She's decided full-time is the way to go. She has provided a job description. I provided what the new organizational chart would look like, including that additional person.
Excellent.
Budgetarily speaking, we had discussed it, so it is something that when we were working on the staffing budget, we can accommodate it. And then she has given us a timeline, and her goal would would be to have somebody start probably early September. She has late August, early September, the new employee begins, but I'm guessing probably early September would be a little bit closer going to full time.
Time for the new school year and.
In time, yep, exactly.
And now they've had a year to plan, to think about what we need.
Yep.
I'm wondering, will this affect at all the number of hours that we're able to give to the part-time children's and teen librarians?
We wrote the budget to be able to accommodate both. We knew there was going to be a lot of growth in that department, that the public was expecting a lot more family service and that sort of thing. So I think probably what would happen, the budget was written to accommodate the staff that we have now, plus add an additional person. I know that we have a couple of internal candidates who are going to be interested, so at that point, we could reevaluate and determine if we would need to hire an additional part-timer if we were to select an internal candidate. The budget would accommodate it, and there's certainly plenty of work to do, so.
Good.
And that will give them, again, a little time to assess programming and the needs.
Well, I have several concerns about this,
Okay.
and I would like for the staffing subcommittee to meet again and have Julie there and Tracy there, because I've got some concerns about. I don't have any concerns about increasing our ability to reach this audience, but it goes a lot deeper than that to me. So I will need some more information before I will vote on this.
Okay, a couple things I do want to point out in this discussion is that that I allowed Tracy to write out the proposal, but from my perspective, one of the things that we did, the original plan was to put in 10 full-time employees. We do at this time have 9. The one that I was most concerned about was we were thinking we would need a full-time facilities manager, and instead of doing that, we did decide to go with Allied Building Services. And so my goal in putting in that 10th full-time employee was, is this person going to be a facilities person, or is this person going to be a librarian? When we decided to go a different direction with facilities, then the determination was that it should be a librarian. And so I sat down with Tracy and we sat down with all of the department heads to figure out where the best place to put this librarian was. In terms of the actual organizational structure, if you look at the organizational structure, one of the things that I was trying to do is create, with each department head, a department head and then a full-time person to support that department head. So if you look at our head of adult services, he has his business and marketing librarian full-time. If you look at our full-time head of technical services, he also has a full-time cataloging technician that supports him. As the library director, I have a full-time administrative assistant that supports me. Our IT person, or our head of circulation IT coordinator, because of the way circulation works, he actually prefers to have part-time people because there's more flexibility. Standing up at the circulation desk for 8 hours a day is not really practical. And then in terms of IT coordination and assistance, he would rather have part-time people in that position as well. But for the head of children's services, to have a full-time person who would be a support person. So the idea is you've got 2 full-timers, so that for children's services, there's pretty much a full-timer here all the time. In the way we work organizationally in this library, we have our department heads, but from a leadership standpoint, we have a requirement that we have 2 full-time employees in the building at all times that it's open to the public. Some libraries will put more weight on their part-timers, and I don't support that, because I feel like the part-time employees, how can they possibly know our policies as well as our full-timers? How can they possibly know the building as well as our full-timers? So our full-timers, while we don't have a lot of full-timers, my goal is always to have them work as a team. So instead of saying, well, is there a department head in the building, I would rather have 2 full-timers in the building who, in an emergency, can put their heads together. So we do need that 10th full-timer, and through analysis, I've determined that a librarian is the direction to go. I definitely think that if you want to sit down with the staffing committee, that's great. I absolutely support that, and we can do that and go over it more fully, and you can have her answer the questions directly.
If we install another full-time youth librarian, would you keep all of the part-time children's and teens librarians? Would there be enough there to justify all of it?
We're thinking, that's a little awkward question to answer.
Well,
because we think,
that's why I say maybe with the subcommittee might want to look at it.
well, absolutely. We know we have internal candidates that are not only interested but are fully qualified. So I have a feeling that what would happen is we would most likely pick an internal candidate and then eliminate the part-time position that was vacated. So.
If you think that that's might be the way you would go, then I could support that.
That's the most, I'm thinking
That was what I was thinking too. Is
yeah.
that
We absolutely want to post it internally and externally,
Well, sure.
to make sure we're getting the best possible.
Right, so whoever gets picked,
No,
it
we
doesn't
definitely
matter,
need to
then the
balance.
position would go, part-time position.
Most likely.
Given that information, then I can go ahead and say, okay.
Okay.
All right. Do we have any other comments or concerns? All right, in that case, will someone make a motion regarding this area?
I move to request to create, let me get this right. I move to approve the request to create and post the position of full-time youth services librarian as presented.
Is there a second? Okay, been moved and seconded to create and post a new position of full-time youth services librarian. Any other commentary or questioning? If not, those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes. Okay, number 7, CUSAC.
Back to the screen.
Back to the screen.
And hopefully the technology will continue to work since it was not working for me earlier. That's enough of the parking lot. Okay. Back in April, a few of us, a few board members and myself went to a strategic planning workshop at the Rochester Hills Public Library. It was a great workshop, lots of great information was presented, and then we sat down and tried to figure out, okay, how do we want to tackle strategic planning? And there were a couple of branches that we wanted to address. The first one was we would like to work on a logo. So it was decided that we will put together a subcommittee to look into logo designers and move forward with that project. So we have that about to get started. Strategic planning, I think we need to develop a strategic planning committee. But in the discussions of strategic planning, one of the things that came up that I think is probably the best place to start is the Quality Services Audit Checklist, which is known as CUSAC. So what is CUSAC? The Quality Services Audit Checklist is a voluntary management standards program available through the Library of Michigan that assists public libraries by setting benchmarks. Libraries measure their progress in various areas in order to achieve certification levels. Up until this point, we haven't even been able to, we hadn't been able to even participate in CUSAC prior to our reestablishment because one of the first things you have to have is a library board, and we didn't have a library board. And then the next thing was we needed to secure that stable funding and make sure the library was going to continue to exist. So we've done all of those things. So now we're back to CUSAC and how we're going to tackle this. So what does CUSAC measure? Well, it looks at governance and administration and human resources, library services, collection development, technology, facilities and equipment, and public relations. And it sets standards in each of those areas, and we go through that list and we see which ones we are doing, and whichever ones we're not doing, we get it together and we start doing those things, and we turn it over to the state, and they recognize that we have met our standards. So how does it work? The Library of Michigan recognizes public libraries as they achieve 3 progressive certification levels. Libraries can be certified at the essential level, enhanced, and excellent levels. To achieve certification at a level, a library must meet the requirements for state aid to public libraries, which we already do, the measures at that level, and the measures at all levels below that level. So you have to start at essential. You can't just shoot for excellent at the top. That would be fun, but that's not really the way it works. You have to start with essential and work your way up one level at a time.
And Julie, that's how we were operating, right? At the essential level?
Well, what you see when you look at these varying certification levels is the benchmarks are very specific. Do you have a library director that is certified to be the library director? The answer is yes. So we meet some of the requirements in each of the 3 levels, but we don't meet any of the levels completely.
Okay.
For example, one of the things that we had talked about was collection development. Collection development at the essential level is 7% of the budget, and when Kimberly was here, she pointed out that in 2014 we were doing 7% of the budget for the library collections, but after the millage passed, the excellent level is 12%, so we did that. So we meet the excellent level in terms of collection, but there are several other things in excellent that we probably don't, and there are probably some things in, I skimmed through it and I have it to pass out for you. In the essential level, there are some things that we need to do that we haven't done, like some policy things and things like that. So what are the steps? This looks like a whole lot of steps and we're not going to go over all of it. But essentially, what the steps are, and this is literally step-by-step off of their website. Essentially what you do is you go into the Library of Michigan's website and you print out, it's a document, it's a fillable document, and you go through those various benchmarks one by one, and the ones you meet, you put an explanation. We meet this because we do these things, and you put the date, and then you go on to the next one. And once you've gotten through all of them, you sign off on it, you send it to the state library, they check and make sure that you've done everything you're supposed to do, and then they send you a certificate and recognize you at the state level. And there is help. It looks like a lot of little tiny steps, but this is because a librarian wrote this. And we are very linear. Yes, we are very linear. But I thought it was interesting because it looks like it's very complicated, but essentially you go in and you, and I'm not saying that it's going to be easy because any kind of an accreditation program is a lot of work. But essentially the steps are all defined for us. There's a support network, Shannon White, who was at the strategic planning workshop, and her phone number is right there, and we can call her anytime. So. But how do we start? So the first thing I think we need to do is form a committee. Of course, we start with the essential level because they make us do that. We review where we stand. We have the committee work with the board and the staff to reach the benchmarks that need improvement, and then apply for essential certification once we reach. And it might take us several months to do that because we're going to run up against some things that we're not doing. For example, there might be a policy that we haven't done. So the staff would need to get together, write that policy. It goes through our policy process, which means that the department heads write it. We take it to the full-time staff, they review it. We take it to the all-staff meeting, they review it. We bring it to the board reviews it. So there's some things that are going to take us some time. I don't know off the top of my head the specifics I've read through, but I know there are a few things in the essential that we need to do. So to start out, like I said, we need to form a committee, and I do have the essential level for you to look at tonight so that you can kind of skim through it, and if you have any questions, we can address some of those.
Julie, what do we get for certification? What's the payoff?
Get to say we're certified.
Well, first of all, yes, that is one of the things, and it's one of the things that we talked to the public about during the campaign was that we wanted to be able to meet the benchmarks that libraries should be meeting.
But it also, I think, will help the committee do the strategic planning.
Absolutely. One of the things that they talked about was when you're strategic planning, how do you decide what's important? Right. And one of the things that's important is to figure out what it is you want to do. And I think one of the first things we want to do is meet benchmark criteria. And it could help us to define for strategic planning where we want to go. One of the things that we could put in our strategic plan is we're going to work on this. I thought maybe it would be helpful if we get started now so we kind of see where we stand. How close are we to being essential? how much work do we have to do.
And I think it may pinpoint strengths and weaknesses.
Absolutely.
We may see that we're doing great in all of these categories except for this one where apparently, we missed that, and so we might want to focus a good part of the early strategic planning on fixing something like that.
And as I was flipping through, I noticed that there are a lot of things in here that in terms of governance, we're doing very well. The board, when the board formed, we had a library attorney who was a specialist in libraries help us through that process. And so some of the things say, the library board goes through an orientation about the Open Meetings Act. Well, of course you did that, so check that off. You have bylaws. We have bylaws, you can check that off. There are a number of things that because we reestablished, we started from square one, so those things are already done. Some of the places we're weaker are things where when we spun off from the township, there was not a lot of documentation that was library specific, so we didn't have a lot of policies in play, and we've tackled most of those, but if you flip through here, you're going to see that there are a few policies that it says, do you have, one of the things that do you have a gift acceptance policy? That's an area where I think you could review that and update that. There's just a number of, none of them are huge, but some of them are going to be really easy. Oh, we do that, we can cross that off. But there are some other ones that'll need a little bit of work.
So who goes through and fills this out? Do you have a subcommittee or some?
Essentially, we would have a committee that would go through and look at it and say, yes, we're doing those things, and fill it out, and then come back to the board and say, these are the things we need to do. And go back to the staff and say, these are the things that we need to do to take to the board for approval.
Because this would be a big thing for someone.
Oh, absolutely. It's huge. Absolutely. It is huge. Well, and it's various areas, like we talked about earlier.
Sure.
There's human resources, there's governance, there's programming, there's public relations, and we have those staff members who, as we go through this, we would say to the person doing public relations, are we doing these things? If we're not doing these, how do we get up to scratch so that we are doing these things? So the committee would look at it and then work on how to delegate out the work to get us up in each area.
So the committee would consist of some board members and
Some
staff?
board members and some staff.
Okay.
Yep.
Just like our other subcommittees.
Yeah.
Yep.
This is all at the essential level.
And this big packet is the essential level, yes. I printed out the full packet. Yeah, always begin at the beginning.
Step one. And what would be your timeline for this committee? Just be formed and...
I think we can start to look for people to see if people are interested. Summer is a hard time. The staff is not going to be real excited about working on this in the summertime because this is our busiest time of the year. In the height of July, we average 75 people an hour coming and going out of the building. But I did want to talk to the board about how you feel about this as a starting point. The subcommittee for strategic planning. As I said, we wanted to tackle the logo, and we wanted to kind of start with this. We talked a little bit about questionnaires. We did a questionnaire in 2012, and we learned a lot from that questionnaire, and we fulfilled a lot of the things that were requested from the data we got out of that questionnaire. So we probably will want to consider that and focus groups down the road, but this just felt like a good place. Let's figure out where we stand first.
Yeah, I think so too.
So you are talking about a committee separate from the strategic planning committee?
This is a project all by itself.
Well, that's kind of, that's kind of what I was thinking.
It's a huge project all by itself, yeah. And it will run, I think once we've done that first measure and we kind of figure out where we stand, we come back to the board and we say, okay, well, we're 2/3 of the way done with the essential level. And then the strategic planning subcommittee can say, excellent, now we can go from there.
Yeah.
Move to the next.
Yeah.
Great.
I think the two are going to end up running in tandem, but we thought this was a good place to start. Logo, QSAC, and then we'll go back to the strategic planning committee and say, okay, this is where we are.
It just provides a structure to do it.
Yep. And that was the point. This checklist was actually put together by library directors, co-op directors, library staff from all over the state of Michigan. It took a number of years to create these benchmarks. None of these are required, as I said, it's a voluntary program. But a lot of libraries do find it to be very, very helpful because as you said, in any library, there are some things you do, you're off the charts really good at, and then there are other things that just slide under the rug and you don't get back to them, and those are the kinds of things that this really forces you to look at it and say, well, yeah, we're really excellent in this area, but let's get this other area up to it.
And because we're a young organization, we want to make sure that we have all of our ducks in a row.
Right.
And that we are starting on a good, solid footing. And so we've made strides in our financial area, in the audit department. So now we want to make strides in how we meet the standards for service.
And I just think that's a really good way, when we made promises to the public, when we asked for the millage approval, and I think that this is a good way of identifying, you know, how we can meet some of those.
Right. Because we did talk about this during.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's a big project. It would not have been wise for us to start this kind of a process prior, because there was that stipulation that if the millage didn't pass, the library would close, and we needed to focus on making sure the library survived. Now that we're stable, now is the time to go back and look at this.
Now we can make it a better library.
Yeah. Build it from the ground up. And this is a nice, stable, linear way, for those of us that are linear thinkers like myself. It's a very linear way for us to do this. So.
Would the board like time to review this? Since this is the essential level, would you like time to review this before we see who would like to work on this committee?
I kind of would, I mean, because I'm always interested in everything, but I do want to kind of get a feel for this before I jump up and volunteer for anything else.
Well, and the other thing is, as I said, the library staff isn't going to even want to look at this until probably August. So if you wanted to think about it, and we could review it again in July or August, and then shoot to
We
start.
can talk about this, I think, in July, and see
who's
what the framework is
interested in
going
what.
to be.
Yeah.
We want to do that because we also have budget issues.
Yes.
So therefore, let's review this
Yes.
Okay.
this month till our next meeting. And everybody gets a chance to make some notes and look and see what
it's a good
question
idea.
marks and so forth. And
It's
then
homework, it'll be our homework.
our homework, yes.
I can do homework.
Since these quality things are very similar to the educational field, where they also try to meet quality assessment. So I think it's a good transfer of information.
The timing is really good. I know that the Parks and Rec Department is also going through a similar accreditation process. So there are other organizations within the community that are doing these sorts of things.
All right.
So I'll put it back on the July agenda. By then, I'm sure you'll have questions, and I'll be able to answer whatever those questions are. So, very
Okay.
good.
Number 8, budget. Let's take a look at planning for the new budget.
Okay, so the library's attorney has recommended that the library complete the 2016 budget for approval at the same time that the library's L4029 millage rate documentation will need to be approved. So, I don't know if you'll remember this, but last year in September, L4029 is the thing where the board reviews the millage rate and sets the millage rate and approves the millage rate, and then we turn it over to the county. The budget technically does not need to be done until December 31st, but the attorney is accustomed to most libraries doing their L4029 and their budget at the same time. Approve it, one public, instead of doing 2 public hearings. We did 2 public hearings. We did a public hearing in September, we did a public hearing, I think, in November. But her suggestion is, let's get the budget written and approved in September, be done with it. And if all goes well, maybe you can have Christmas off. So,
How does that sound?
sounds
good.
great.
Yeah,
Very good.
Right.
So in other words, you're recommending that we vote on the budget in September meeting?
In September,
Yes,
at the
okay,
September
that's-
meeting, and
that
you
was
we'll have the
what I was
public hearing
thinking.
and the vote on it and be done with it, and then in October and November, and we can work on other projects like QSAC and some of those kinds of things, any policies or whatever that we want to work on. And then, just, like I said, it's not uncommon, once library boards start to get into a groove where they're working efficiently, and we had so much to do, but potentially you can skip a month. Some library boards skip July, some skip December.
So last year, we held one or two workshops.
She's holding a carrot up.
So last year, we did hold 1 or 2 public workshops that we just devoted to the budget. Do we want to follow that similar procedure?
I think that that worked well, but I also think that we may have addressed some of the issues through the staffing. We may only need one.
That's what I was
I'm
thinking.
thinking this
We
year.
should have one.
The format was already there.
I'm thinking that you've worked really hard the last 2 years, and I think that we probably could get away with one.
I think that when we've learned more about the process, I think that that will make it faster, and I think one, I mean, we can always schedule a
Yeah,
second one
we
if
could
we
have
needed
it
to,
to have
Right, doesn't
one
work.
and leave enough time between that.
if there was an issue, yeah.
So the question is, let's see, if we want to approve in September, maybe we want to do this in July?
You prefer
In
July
case-
or August?
Well, in case there
Towards the
was,
end of June, right?
in case there was
Or early August? I
no
don't wanna
later
let
than
it go-
early August.
I don't want to let it go into September because we have to,
Right.
there has to be 10 days prior to the board meeting
Right,
for the public
right.
hearing and that kind of thing.
Maybe we
So-
can kind of link it prior to our July board meeting or something like that.
Could do
so
that.
we're
What date
trying to
is
get it
that?
done.
Our July board meeting is the
20th.
20th.
The 20th this year.
And our August board meeting is the 17th.
That's
Which
probably
seems kind
too
of, I think
late.
the July
Yeah,
one,
that's
if
too
we're
late.
going to link it to the board meeting.
July 20th. You mean like have it before?
Are we thinking having it on like at 4:30 on the
Yeah, and-
Well,
20th?
that would be difficult though for some of our board members.
I'd be available. I could make it at 4:30.
You would,
Thank you.
I didn't know since we had backed the meeting up to 5:30, we would have to do it like after the board meeting.
You
I
could,
appreciate
you could
that.
move your regular meeting to 7 o'clock if you wanted, or 6 o'clock, or if you wanted to have if you wanted to have your budget workshop run from 4:30 to 6,
Great.
and then,
Yeah,
And
let's
then-
do that.
because I have plenty of time to repost the
That
meeting,
particular-
the regular meeting is being 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
30
I
to
think
6.
I would be in favor of
Yeah,
that.
that would work.
Okay.
How does everyone else feel about
I like
That sounds okay. So we're
As long as we
looking
got
at,
coffee.
we're looking
If we're
at
gonna make
July.
Nancy here that long,
Yes.
it's coffee.
Oh, it's happening.
So July 20th, have a workshop at 4:30, a budget workshop. And then hold the meeting that day at 6 o'clock.
Yes.
We'll all go out to dinner. So is that far enough in advance for people to check their schedules?
I'm putting it on my schedule right now.
That works well.
Now, usually the way we do a budget workshop is we do those in the little meeting room in a square.
Right.
Yeah. And that's a roll up your sleeves kind of meeting where, you know, we spread out all the papers and pass them around and ask all the questions and that kind of thing. So that would be in the youth activities room, and then the regular meeting would be in here already set up in the formal setting, so.
Well,
Okay.
that went well. And then we can make a decision about whether we need another
Right.
go around or if we think we're in pretty good shape.
That's early enough that if you needed a second meeting, we could do it early in August. You could give me a week or so to put together whatever is requested, and
Because the problem is in September is that our board meeting is the week after Labor Day.
Oh.
So Labor Day is not until the 7th this year.
Right.
And our board meeting is the next Monday.
Yeah,
So that gives us
wanna-
no time, really. So it's really July and August would be the best discussion times for this.
Right.
The other thing is we could move the meting back in September if it's too close.
It could be.
You know, we
it
could,
could be moved, yeah. And with the public hearing, I started to write down what the dates needed to be for when we have to have
Or
it
you're
posted in
gonna
the
have to post
paper.
it, yeah.
Because if the meeting is September
14.
14th, the public hearing posted in the Clarkston News, it needs to be posted in the September 2nd edition of the newspaper, which means it needs to go to Don Rush absolutely no later than
The end of
Friday
August.
the 28th, August 28th.
if we know by August 17th.
Yeah.
So that will give Julie something, something to work on while
Keep me
we're...
out of mischief for the summer. No mischief for me, so.
All right. So everyone is in agreement that we will have a workshop on July 20th.
Yes.
At 4:30.
Okay. And then the regular meeting will be moved to 6 PM, and I will make sure that the public posting is appropriate on both of those.
All right. All right. This has been a busy meeting, we have homework, and at the moment, I will accept a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second. Who was the second? I'm sorry. That was, thank you.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion is adjourned at 7:12.